Back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, there were quite a few social psychologists and sociologists that were looking at why people enter and stay within relationships. And they looked at relationships in the concept of rewards. What are the rewards of being in a relationship? And the costs. What are the costs of being within a relationship? And they came up with a theory that was called social exchange theory. And social exchange theory basically treats social interactions as transactions between people who engage in relationships with the aim of maximizing their rewards and minimizing their costs. So today I'll be talking about social exchange theory, its basic tenets, and hopefully by the time I finish this lecture, you'll have a better understanding of how social exchange theory works within relationships. So again, according to social exchange theory, we view relationships as a series of social exchanges or transactions between people that either have outcomes of rewards or costs. Rewards are the benefits that we get out of our interactions with others, whereas costs are the drawbacks from those same interactions. So rewards might include love, support, companionship, maybe even status, or even maybe some instrumental rewards such as doing the dishes for me or cleaning my car. Whereas the costs are the drawbacks from those uh, interactions. And so some drawbacks might be having to spend more time than we want with the other person or time with their family when we don't want to, uh, effort towards a relationship, emotional burden, conflict within the relationship, or maybe me doing some tasks for you that I just don't enjoy, like mowing the lawn or doing the dishes. So when we enter a relationship, we have this, we are seeking to maximize our rewards and minimize our costs, according to this theory. And we have a benchmark for what we will accept within a relationship. So we have these expectations, and I always like to think of it in terms of real versus ideal. In an ideal world, I get everything I want. In a real world, what am I willing to put up with to get my needs met? And so the benchmark is kind of like that real world. What do I believe I deserve? Or what do I believe I expect from the relationship? And anything beyond those expectations is positive for me in this relationship. And generally speaking, the most successful relationships are those that which develop, whereas each person within that relationship works to sustain the other's needs and get their needs met. And in doing so, it's a kind of a win-win situation. I'm getting your needs met, but at the same time, you're getting my needs met within that relationship. So what I'd like you to do is when you have a chance, choose a friendship that you have and pull out a piece of paper and write down rewards on one side of the list or the paper and costs on the other side of the paper. And just start listing rewards that you're getting out of the relationship and start listing the costs that you have to pay for being in that relationship. And for each one of those values that you put down, mark a numerical value between 0 and 10 on each one of those items that you mark, for both the positives and the negatives of being in that relationship. And when you get done, compare those lists. Look at the lists, add up the numerical totals, and if you see that your rewards are outweighing your costs according to this theory, you're more likely to stay in that relationship and you're more likely to be happy within that relationship. But you might ask yourself, sometimes I know people that don't seem happy in their relationships at all, yet they stay in them. Why do they stay in a relationship that they're not happy in? Or vice versa. I know people that are very happy in a relationship, or they seem to be happy, and then they leave that relationship for a different relationship. Why would they do that? Well, this theory does look at that as well. How Tybo and Kelly look at these relationships and try to analyze why people do leave when they're happy or don't leave when they're unhappy is they realize that the rewards and costs aren't the whole picture, and that there's a whole world outside of that couple that's also affecting that relationship or that perception of the value of that relationship. And they call this the comparison level of alternatives. Are these are alternatives to staying in that relationship? And they suggest that pressures outside the relationship also can impact the relationship. So, for example, if I am unhappy in a relationship, eh, I'm emotionally drained, I'm putting out way too much effort into the relationship, whatever, and my my options if for leaving that is to be alone and in an area where I don't know anybody, I will feel uncomfortable. I may choose to stay in that relationship even though I'm unhappy because my alternatives are worse than staying in the relationship. Alternatively, sometimes people leave rewarding relationships because they perceive the external rewards from other relationships as having greater value. So somebody may leave a relationship to go off to college, and because they perceive that the rewards of going to college and meeting new people might be better than staying in the relationship that they have. So we can't always just look at the comparison level within the relationship. We also have to look at the comparison level of alternatives to truly understand the value of relationships or our value towards that relationship. So today we talked about social exchange theory. First, we talked about how we have a comparison level before we enter a relationship, which is a benchmark that we have regarding our expectations of the perceived rewards and costs of being in that relationship. And we talked about how the rewards are anything that's positive, that is above what our benchmark is, and the costs are any of the negatives that are higher than our perceived negatives should be within the relationship. And then I talked about how the theory suggests that we compare the costs versus the benefits or the rewards in that relationship. And if the rewards outweigh the costs, if we're getting more rewards than we are costs, and they have a higher value, we're more likely to stay within a relationship. However, we also looked at external pressures called the comparison level of alternatives and how it impacts the relationship and how we tend, even if we're unhappy in a relationship, we tend to look outside of the relationship and see what our alternatives are. And if those alternative costs are higher than the costs of staying in that relationship, we will continue staying in that relationship even if we're unhappy. What I like about social exchange theory it is that it is one of many different types of theories that compare rewards versus costs in relationships. What I don't like about this theory is that it boils down social exchanges as transactions that have value, not unlike us using money as value to buy something. And I don't think that relationships are quite as simple as social exchange theory points out, but I do think it has a good fundamental understanding of the nature of how we go about defining relationships and whether or not we want to stay or leave. Thank you.